Tullyhogue Fort is a scheduled monument in state care and is located in the townland of Ballymully Glebe, near the village of Tullyhogue, some 4 kilometres to the south of Cookstown. The site comprises a circular earthwork enclosure set on a prominent hill that offers the wonderful panoramic views across the surrounding Tyrone countryside, even on the most overcast of days. Planted with mature trees, Tullaghoge is a prominent feature on the landscape. But why is this site so important? The place name Tullyhogue translates as the Mound of the Warriors, and this was the inauguration place of the O'Neills, the rulers of Tyrone during the medieval period. As such, it was once a major centre of political power in Ulster, the place where the dynasty assembled to crown their new ruler. The O'Neills originated from within the Cenel, who expanded their territory across the Sperrins into East Tyrone in the 11th century, from Inishowen in modern County Donegal. It's quite probably the case that Tullyhogue was taken over by the Cenel from the previous rulers of the region, the O'Tutra, and that this was where the O'Tutra had inaugurated their own kings. Tullyhogue is first mentioned within the Annals of Ulster under the year 913, when it was the location for a peace agreement between the Cenel and the Ulla. This certainly indicates that the site evidently had political importance in the early 10th century, prior to the arrival of the Cenel. Archaeological evidence obtained during excavations in 2014 revealed evidence associated with this early medieval activity, in the form of a corn drying kiln located on the southern slope of the hill and radiocarbon dated to between the 9th and 10th centuries AD. The first explicit reference in the historical record to the use of the site as an O'Neill inauguration dates to 1432, when the Annals of Ulster inform us that Owen, the son of Niall O'Neill, was made king, and he went to Tullyhogue and was crowned on the flagstone of the kings by the will of God and men, bishops and poets. Such an important location required security, and this duty fell to the O'Hagan lineage, who held the prestigious position of hereditary guardians of the site. The O'Hagans were part of the Luchti, the household families that supported the O'Neills, and by hereditary right their Taoiseach, or leader, presided over the crowning of the O'Neill during the inauguration ceremony. The earliest connection between the site and the O'Hagan lineage is in 1056, when we're told in the Annals of Ulster of the death of Gillamura O'Hagan, the overseer or steward of Tullyhogue. The land around Tullyhogue became their estate, known as Ballyhagan, and their burial ground was at Dunnagh 600 metres southwest of the enclosure. The last O'Neill Lord of Tyrone inaugurated at the site was Hugh O'Neill in 1595, at the start of the 9 Years' War, that terrible conflict which pitched the Gaelic lordships of Ulster against the forces of the Tudor crown. After the Battle of Kinsale in 1601 and the defeat of the Gaelic Confederation, the English army under Lord Mountjoy moved into Tyrone and arrived at Tullyhogue in September 1602. When Mountjoy brake down the stone where the O'Neills were wont to be created, being of stone set in the open field. This destruction of the Lech na Ree epitomised the reduction in O'Neill's position, and it would ensure that no more O'Neills might be coronated here. It was therefore a politically motivated action, demonstrating the power of the new force in the land. It is somewhat ironic, therefore, that some of the best evidence that we have of the appearance of the chair and the ceremonies that were conducted during an O'Neill inauguration are to be found in the work of an English mapmaker, Richard Bartlett, who accompanied Mountjoy into Ulster. In the first of these, a map of Ulster, Bartlett sketches an inauguration ceremony in progress. 7 individuals, probably the leaders of the Luchti or the household families, are gathered around the new ruler, with one individual, presumably the O'Hagan Taoiseach, holding what appears to be a shoe over the head of the O'Neill. The shoe was most likely used to indicate to the new lord how he should walk worthily in the footsteps of his predecessors. In his second pictorial map, Bartlett depicts the wooded hilltop at Tullaghoge. Within the enclosure are 2 thatched houses, one of which is larger than the other, and we can presume that these houses were occupied by the O'Hagans. There are 2 gateways into the interior of the enclosure, one with a pathway leading down to the Lech Naree, which Bartlett has shown on the hill slope to the south side of the enclosure. He also provided a more detailed drawing of the stone chair, and from this we can see that it took the form of a boulder framed on 3 sides with large stone slabs. 2 boulders located in the field to the southeast of the enclosure were investigated during archaeological fieldwork in 2014, with excavation trenches opened to see if any features associated with the Lech Naree could be identified, but neither investigation proved fruitful. The importance of the great chair to the site, however, still echoes, and this finds modern resonance in the positioning of a replica chair at the site's new car park. During the Ulster plantation, the land around Tullaghoge was granted in 1610 to a new settler, Robert Lindsay, and a survey of 1619 declares that Lindsay's wife was living in a timber house within the enclosure. A subsequent survey of 1622, however, notes that Lindsay's family had moved to the base of the hill and that only a ruined timber building remained on the hilltop, an episode that marks the end of Tullaghoge's long history of use as a residence. If we look at the form of the monument, we see that it has a gap in its outer bank and that this is one of 2 banks that encircle the monument. There's no evidence for an outer ditch, and the area in the interior between the 2 banks is flat, with a causeway leading to a gap in the inner bank that provides access to the inner area. First impressions might suggest this to be an early medieval ring fort or defended farmstead, but Tullaghoge does not appear to have had an outer ditch, while its banks are not set closely together. As such, the monument doesn't conform to a typical ring fort and it has limited defensive strength. That said, the Crown Survey of 1619 described the site as having a good strong bawn of earth with a quick-set hedge about it and a ditch about it. This can be read to suggest that there was indeed once an external ditch around the hilltop, and Bartlett's map does suggest a simple ditch and bank arrangement. Could the enclosure have been modified or landscaped at some period in the years after 1600? This is a debated issue, but a geophysical survey in 2008 failed to find any evidence for a ditch. In addition, it is possible that the site commenced its existence as a prehistoric enclosure, possibly a henge monument. If this were the case, however, it would mean that we would have to assume that Bartlett was not accurate in what he drew in 1602, or that he assumed that the earthworks were a lot less complex in format to what they are in reality. What we can say, however, is that the site has not really changed in appearance since it was first surveyed in detail in 1849. This plan of the site was published in the 1857 edition of the Ulster Journal of Archaeology, and it shows a complex monument with 3 concentric sets of banks and 2 causeways leading into the central area. A modern digital survey of the site has demonstrated that the 1849 plan is remarkably accurate. Modern archaeological excavations have not been undertaken within the enclosure, although we know that an antiquarian investigation was carried out in the middle of the 19th century, and the faint scar of their trench can still be noted as a slight depression in the southeast of the interior. Archaeological excavations, however, have been conducted in the immediate vicinity, most notably in advance of the development of a new car park in 2015, work which revealed evidence of medieval settlement concurrent with the occupation of the hilltop enclosure by the O'Hagans. Two structures dating from the 11th to 13th centuries were discovered. The first of these was a small oval feature interpreted as the remains of a wickerwork building, possibly used for agricultural purposes. The second structure was considered as a possible cottage, with post holes, metal surface, and a possible firestone for a hearth. A third structure was also revealed by the excavation. Represented by a shallow 40 centimetre deep rectangular gully that enclosed a space measuring 15 metres by 5 metres in size, this marked the location of a large building. The gully, however, did not represent the foundations for the house. Rather, it represented a drip gully, designed to carry rainwater falling from the building's thatched roof away from the area around the walls. It's a feature commonly associated with crux-built houses, where the upright timber blades that carry the weight of the roof are placed on sill pads or sill beams. The artefacts and radiocarbon dates associated with the gully indicate that it belonged to the late medieval period, probably the 16th century. Such buildings were to be found in what were the Anglo-Irish areas of medieval Ireland, but this is the first time such an example has been discovered in a Gaelic area, and it speaks of the cultural connections that existed among the native Irish lordships and their Anglo-Irish counterparts, also expressed in shared weaponry and the construction of tower houses. Evidently, the excavation had revealed a large house, and most probably a hall, similar to those described by Richard Stanihurst in his book of 1584, where he noted that the Gaelic lords had halls, quite large and spacious, which are shaped and fashioned out of clay and mud, covered for the most part with thatch from the fields. It is at this point that we can also reflect on the large thatched building in the interior of the enclosure as depicted by Bartlett in his pictorial map from 1602. Was this the English cartographer's view of a second hall at Tullyhogue, and one similar in size and form to that revealed during the excavation? Tullyhogue is quiet now, a peaceful place for a summer walk or picnic, or for a wander on a crisp winter's day. Yet as we take our leave, we contemplate all those who called this place home, and how, for them, this was the centre of their world.